In 1873 Wyoming Territory, desperate ranchers bid on cattle at county auctions to survive the devastating drought. Samuel Mackenzie shocked the entire town when he spent his last dollars buying 12-year-old Moses, a black orphan boy being sold into servitude to pay his dead father's debts. The community expected Mackenzie to work the child like livestock, but instead he chose to adopt Moses as his own son and teach him to read and write. This single act of compassion ignited a firestorm of hatred that would ultimately force Mackenzie to face down an armed mob demanding Moses be hanged for murder. Samuel Mackenzie was about to discover that choosing love over prejudice in the American West could cost him everything. Dawn cracked over Mackenzie Ranch like a whip. The sky bled orange across the Wyoming dust. Samuel Mackenzie stood in his yard, rifle in hand. 20 men faced him from horseback. Their shadows stretched long and dark across the cracked earth. Sheriff Coleman sat tall in his saddle. His badge caught the early light. Behind Samuel, Moses waited. Young man now, not the boy from 12 years back. His hands steady on his own weapon. The wind carried the scent of sage and something else. Fear, maybe. Or the smell of choices coming home to roost. Coleman's voice cut through the morning stillness. Hand him over, Mackenzie. That boy murdered my nephew. Samuel's grip tightened on the rifle stock. The wood felt familiar, worn smooth by years of hard use. Over my dead body. Moses stepped forward. Samuel held up one hand. Not yet. The crowd shifted. Horses stamped. Men who'd known Samuel for decades now looked at him like a stranger, like something dangerous that needed putting down. Jake, his foreman, sat among them. That hurt more than Samuel expected. Jake's eyes found the ground. Coleman leaned forward in his saddle. You've protected that murderer long enough. Time to pay the price. Samuel's mind drifted. Back to another morning, another choice. The one that started all this. 12 years earlier, the auction block had stood in the center of Copper Creek. Samuel remembered the dust. Always the dust. It coated everything that summer. The drought had been merciless. His cattle were dying. His ranch bleeding money like a stuck pig. The bank breathing down his neck. Harrison Coleman's bank. The one that used to belong to Samuel's. Family before the war changed everything. Samuel had come to buy cattle, what little stock he could afford. The auctioneer's voice rang out over the crowd. Lot after lot of animals too thin to matter. Then they brought out the boy. Moses had been 12 then, small for his age, scared but trying not to show it. His father had died owing money, big money, the kind that meant 7 years of labor to pay it off. 7 years of his childhood sold to the highest bidder. The crowd gathered closer, men sizing up the boy like horseflesh, talking about the work they could get out of him, how long he might last in the mines or the fields. Samuel felt something break inside his chest, something that had been cracking since his own boy died, since Thomas took fever and never came back from it. The bidding started low. $5, 10, 15. Samuel's hand went up. 20. The crowd turned, surprised. Samuel Mackenzie wasn't known for buying people. Wasn't known for much of anything anymore except slowly losing everything his family had built. 25, called out Pete Morrison, rancher from the next valley over. Hard man. Harder on his workers. 30, Samuel said. Morrison looked annoyed. 40? The numbers climbed. Samuel felt his remaining money slipping away. Money he needed for cattle, for feed, for keeping his ranch alive another season. 60, he called out. Morrison shook his head, walked away muttering about fools and their money. The auctioneer looked around. 60 going once, going twice. Samuel's heart hammered. What was he doing? He couldn't afford this. Couldn't afford to save one boy when his whole world was crumbling. Sold to Samuel Mackenzie for $60. The crowd dispersed. Business done. Samuel walked to the platform. Moses stood there looking at him. Eyes full of questions Samuel didn't have answers for. Come on, boy. Samuel said. His voice came out rougher than intended. They rode back to the ranch in silence, Moses sitting stiff behind him on the horse, probably expecting the worst. Most men who bought boys at auction had plans, hard plans. Jake met them at the gate, took one look at Moses and frowned. "Boss, what's this about?" "Boy needed a home," Samuel said. Jake pulled him aside, out of Moses's hearing. "You treat that boy like family, this town will turn on you, burn you out, maybe worse." Samuel looked back at Moses, standing alone by the porch, small and trying to be brave, like Thomas used to do when the nightmares came. "Good thing I don't give a damn what this town thinks." That night Samuel sat by Thomas's grave. Small headstone, behind the house, weeds growing through the wooden fence he'd built around it. "Sarah, I failed our boy," he whispered to the wind, to the memory of his wife buried beside their son. "Maybe I can get this right." Moses had been standing in the kitchen doorway, listening. Samuel saw him slip away into the darkness, probably thinking Samuel had bought him to replace what he'd lost. The boy was wrong, but Samuel didn't know how to explain the difference, how to say that some choices come from the heart instead of the head, how saving Moses might be the only way to save himself. The next morning would bring consequences, the town's anger, the bank's pressure, Coleman's threats. But that night, Samuel felt something he hadn't felt since Thomas died. Purpose. The weight of a choice made for the right reasons, even if it destroyed him. Outside his window he could see Moses's room, lamplight under the door, probably planning to run. Samuel wouldn't stop him if he tried. Freedom had to be chosen, not forced, but he hoped the boy would stay long enough to learn that some men still believed every child deserved a chance at life, even if it cost them everything. Moses waited for the beating, for chains, for the back-breaking work that always came after, the auction block. Instead, Samuel showed him to a room, real bed, clean sheets, window that faced the mountains. "This is yours," Samuel said. Moses sat on the edge of the mattress. Springs creaked under his weight. He'd never had a bed before, always slept on floors or hay or wherever exhaustion took him. The first meal came on actual plates, beef stew, fresh bread, more food than Moses had seen in months. He ate slowly, waiting for someone to snatch it away. Samuel ate across from him, said nothing, just the sound of spoons against ceramic and wind rattling the windows. After supper, Samuel placed a book on the table, worn leather cover, pages yellow with age. "Can you read?" Moses shook his head. Samuel opened to the first page. "We'll start here." The lessons began the next morning. Samuel patient as stone, Moses quick as wildfire. Letters became words, words became sentences. The boy's mind soaked up knowledge like drought-cracked earth drinking rain. But the town watched, always watching. Mrs. Henderson stopped buying Mackenzie beef, said the meat tasted wrong now, spoiled somehow. Her husband nodded agreement, wouldn't meet Samuel's eyes. At church, Reverend Pike spoke about proper order, natural places, the way God intended things. His sermon ran long that Sunday. Eyes kept drifting to where Samuel and Moses sat in the back pew. Moses felt the stares, the whispers that stopped when he passed. Children crossed the street rather than walk near him. Their mothers pulled them close. Harrison Coleman made his first visit on a Tuesday, rode up alone, dust cloud trailing behind his horse like a warning. Samuel met him on the porch. Moses watched from the kitchen window. Coleman's voice carried on the wind. "Heard you're playing teacher now." Samuel's shoulders stayed square. "Boys got a right to learn." "Rights." Coleman tasted the word like something bitter. "That's a dangerous notion out here, Mackenzie. Gets folks thinking all sorts of wrong ideas." Coleman's horse stamped, impatient, like its rider. "Bank's been patient with your loan," Coleman continued. But patience has limits, like everything else. After Coleman left, Samuel found Moses in the barn. The boy was mucking stalls, working harder than necessary, anger in every movement. "He threatened you because of me." Samuel picked up a pitchfork, started working beside him. "Harrison Coleman's been threatening me since before you were born, got nothing to do with you." But Moses heard the lie underneath, saw how Samuel's jaw tightened when he spoke Coleman's name. That night, Moses discovered the room. He'd been looking for extra blankets. Winter coming hard and early. The door was hidden behind the pantry. Locked, but the wood was old, rotted around the hinges. Inside, everything stopped. A child's room, frozen in time. Toys lined up on shelves, clothes folded neat in drawers. Pictures on the wall showing a boy with Samuel's eyes and a woman's gentle smile. Thomas Mackenzie, born 1859, died 1871. Same age Moses was now. The photographs told the story. Happy family. Father and mother and son. Then just father and son. Then just graves behind the house where the wind never stopped blowing. Moses touched the toys, the books, everything clean and waiting. Like Thomas might walk through the door any moment. Understanding hit like lightning, cold and sudden and illuminating everything. Samuel found him there an hour later. Moses standing in the middle of the shrine Samuel had built to his grief. "You bought me to replace him." Samuel went very still. The way wounded animals do before they run or fight. "No. Look around," Moses said. "Same age, same size clothes. You're trying to bring back your dead boy." Samuel sat down heavy on Thomas's bed. The mattress creaked under his weight. He looked older suddenly, worn down like stones in a riverbed. "I didn't buy you to replace Thomas." His voice came out cracked, broken. "I bought you because I failed my own boy. Let him die when I should have saved him. Couldn't watch another child be destroyed." Moses felt something shift inside his chest, like ice breaking up on a frozen river. "Every child deserves a chance at life," Samuel continued. "That's not about Thomas, that's about you." The town's anger grew through autumn. Customers stopped coming. Suppliers found excuses. Even Jake started looking uncomfortable, stayed later, each day checking fences that didn't need checking. Moses's learning accelerated. He devoured books, absorbed mathematics like a sponge. Samuel taught him business, how to read contracts, spot lies in ledgers. The boy was brilliant, smarter than Samuel had been at twice his age. But intelligence made him dangerous in ways Samuel was only beginning to understand. Harrison Coleman visited again, brought his brother this time. Sheriff Coleman. Badges and authority and barely contained threat. "Boy's getting ideas above his station," Harrison said. "What ideas are those?" "Ideas that he's equal. Ideas that he belongs." Sheriff Coleman's hand rested on his gun. "Ideas that might spread." After they left, Samuel found Moses in Thomas's room. The boy spent time there now, not hiding, just thinking, surrounded by the ghost of what Samuel had lost. "They're scared," Moses said. Samuel nodded. Fear made men do terrible things. Always. Maybe I should leave." "Where would you go?" Moses had no answer. There was nowhere to run in this territory. Nowhere a boy like him could survive alone. That night, reports came from town. Windows broken at the Chinese laundry. Rocks thrown at the Mexican family's house. Someone had painted words on the schoolhouse door. Ugly words about knowing your place. Samuel cleaned his rifle, oiled the action, checked his ammunition. Moses watched from the doorway. "You can't fight the whole town." "Won't have to," Samuel said. "Just the ones foolish enough to come here." But they both knew the truth. This was bigger than one ranch, bigger than one man's choice to do right. The town was choosing sides. Lines being drawn in dust that wouldn't wash away. Winter was coming, hard and unforgiving. And with it, consequences that would test everything Samuel and Moses had built together. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling windows. bending trees, carrying the scent of snow and something else, change coming whether they were ready or not. The night riders came with winter. Moses heard them first, hoofbeats on frozen ground, distant but getting closer. He woke Samuel with a touch to the shoulder. They watched from the darkened window, 6 men on horseback, faces hidden beneath hat brims and pulled-up bandanas. They rode past the ranch toward town, toward the Chinese quarter where the Laundry family lived. Samuel reached for his rifle. Moses caught his arm. "We follow," Moses whispered. "See what they do." They trailed the riders through the darkness, kept their distance, watched as the men surrounded the small house where the Chen family slept. The riders didn't burn anything, didn't break windows, just circled, made their presence known. Let fear do the rest. When the riders left, Samuel and Moses approached the house. Mr. Chen stood in his doorway, wife and children huddled behind him. "They said next time would be different," Chen whispered. Samuel helped them pack. Moses carried their belongings to the wagon. By dawn, the Chen family was gone. Heading east toward family in Denver, another family followed within days, then another. The town was bleeding its differences away. One scared family at a time. Moses started keeping records, names of the riders he recognized, times and places, what was said and done. His handwriting grew precise, elegant, better than most men in town could manage. Samuel found him writing late one night, pages covered in careful script, documentation of every threat, every broken window, every family driven away. "What's this for?" "Evidence," Moses said. "Someday someone will want the truth." But Moses was collecting more than evidence of night riders. He'd discovered the real story buried in courthouse records. Land deeds that didn't match, signatures that looked forged, loans that appeared and disappeared like magic. The Coleman family's rise to power hadn't been clean. Samuel's father had owned the bank before the war. Good man. Fair with his loans. Helped struggling families instead of crushing them. When he died fighting for the union, his widow tried to keep the business going. Harrison Coleman had been the bank's accountant then. Trusted, reliable, above suspicion. The records showed how carefully he'd worked, moving money, altering documents, creating debts that never existed. When Samuel's mother finally lost everything, Coleman bought the bank for a fraction of its worth. Legal theft, hidden beneath layers of paper and official seals. Moses brought the evidence to Samuel, spread the documents across the kitchen table like cards in a losing hand. Samuel studied them in silence. His jaw worked, but no words came. Finally, he swept the papers into a pile. "Burn them." "Samuel, burn them. Nothing good comes from digging up the past." But Moses didn't burn them. He hid them instead. Wrapped in oilcloth, buried beneath the floorboards of Thomas's room. The town changed around them. Stores closed early. People crossed streets to avoid each other. Conversations died when strangers approached. Moses felt the shift most of all. Where once there'd been curiosity, now there was calculation. People measuring him, wondering what he knew, how dangerous he might become. His education was showing. The way he spoke, carried himself, made decisions that seemed beyond his station. Some folks who might have accepted a simple farm boy couldn't stomach a young man who thought for himself. The first real confrontation came at the general store. Moses was buying supplies, writing out the list in his careful script. Mrs. Patterson watched him form each letter. "Where'd you learn to write like that?" Moses kept his eyes on the paper. "Samuel taught me." "Taught you pretty good?" Her voice carried something sharp, maybe too good. Other customers gathered, watching, listening. Moses felt their attention like heat from a fire. "Boy thinks he's smart," someone muttered. Moses finished his list, paid with exact change, left without looking back. That night Samuel found him sitting on Thomas's bed. staring at the photographs on the wall. "Maybe they're right," Moses said. "Maybe I'm getting ideas above my station." Samuel sat beside him. The mattress creaked under their combined weight. "Your station is whatever you make it. Easy for you to say. You're white." The words hung between them. True and ugly and impossible to take back. Samuel nodded slowly. "You're right. I don't know what it's like to be you, but I know what it's like to lose everything that matters. And I know what it's like to choose between safe and right." Moses looked at the pictures again. Thomas's young face smiling back at him. Innocent. Unaware of how short his time would be. "What would you choose?" "Same thing every time," Samuel said. "Right. Even if it kills me." The crisis came on a snow-covered night in February. Moses was walking back from town. Late errand for Samuel. The streets were empty except for yellow lamplight spilling from saloon windows. He heard the struggle first. Muffled sounds from the alley behind the bank. A woman's voice. Frightened. Pleading. Moses found them in the shadows. David Coleman, Harrison's nephew, forcing himself on Mei Lin, the young Chinese woman who'd stayed behind when her family fled. She was fighting, trying to scream. David's hand covered her mouth. Moses didn't think, just moved. Grabbed David by the shoulder, spun him around. "Let her go." David stumbled backward, drunk, angry at being interrupted. "Mind your own business, boy." Mei Lin scrambled away, dress torn, face streaked with tears. David lunged forward, swinging wild. Moses stepped aside. David's momentum carried him into the alley wall. His head struck the brick with a sound like an axe hitting wood. He dropped, didn't move. Moses knelt beside him, checked for breathing, for a pulse, found nothing. David Coleman was dead. Mei Lin stood pressed against the opposite wall, shaking, eyes wide with terror. "You have to disappear," Moses told her. "Tonight. They'll never believe your word against his." She nodded, understanding, already backing toward the street. "What, about you?" Moses looked down at the body, at the blood pooling beneath David's head, at the end of everything he and Samuel had built together. "I'll face what comes." Mei Lin vanished into the darkness. Moses sat with the body until Sheriff Coleman found him an hour later, drawn by reports of voices in the alley. Coleman took one look at his dead nephew, at Moses kneeling beside the corpse. His hand went to his gun. "You murdering devil?" Moses raised his hands, showed his palms. It was self-defense. He was attacking a woman. What woman? The alley was empty except for them. No witnesses. No evidence of what really happened. Just a dead white boy and a young man who had no right to defend himself. Coleman's deputies arrived, chains and shackles. Questions Moses couldn't answer without making things worse. They locked him in the jail. Stone walls, iron bars, the smell of fear and old violence. Samuel came at dawn, stood outside the cell, his face gray as winter sky. "We can fight this," he said quietly. "I've got evidence. About the Colemans. Their crimes, it might be enough." Moses gripped the bars, cold iron under his palms. "If we use that evidence, they'll know how much I've learned, how smart I really am. They'll never let me live in peace." Samuel's hands covered his, warm against the metal. "Then we run. Tonight. Get you out of here." Moses shook his head. Running would destroy everything Samuel had left. Make him a fugitive, too. Outside, the town was waking up. Voices in the street. Angry voices, getting louder. The mob was forming. Samuel broke Moses out before dawn. No words exchanged, just the sound of metal bending. Lock springs giving way. Footsteps on frozen ground. They rode hard for the ranch. Behind them the town stirred, voices calling out, horses being saddled, the hunt beginning. At the ranch, Samuel handed Moses a rifle, checked his own ammunition. Jake was gone, probably joined the mob. Samuel didn't blame him. Some choices were bigger than loyalty. Moses, show them the papers. The words hung between them. A decision that would change everything. Moses retrieved the documents from Thomas's room, unfolded them with steady hands. The evidence of 12 years of Coleman crimes, land theft, forged signatures, stolen lives. They'll know what I am, Moses said. They already know what you are, Samuel replied. Time to show them who you are. The mob arrived with the sun, 20 men on horseback. Sheriff Coleman at the front, face hard as cemetery stone. Samuel stepped onto his porch, rifle ready, Moses beside him. The distance between them and the crowd measured in heartbeats. Hand him over, Mackenzie. That boy murdered my nephew. Over my dead body. Coleman's horse shifted. Impatient, like the men behind him, all waiting for the word to charge. You know what he did. Samuel's voice carried across the yard, clear as church bells. I know what your nephew did, and I know what Moses did to stop him. The crowd murmured, surprised. They'd expected denials, excuses, not this calm admission. Moses stepped forward, hands visible, unthreatening. The papers rustled in the morning breeze. Sheriff Coleman, your family's been stealing from this town for 12 years. His voice was different now, educated, precise. Every word chosen with care. The crowd fell silent. Moses began to read. Land deeds altered, bank records falsified, families driven from their homes by manufactured debt, the Coleman empire built on legal theft. Harrison Coleman pushed his horse forward, face flushed with anger. Lies, all lies. Your signature on every document, Moses continued. Witnessed, notarized, recorded at the courthouse. The papers, passed from hand to hand. Men who could read examining the evidence. Their faces changing as they understood the scope of the deception. Old Pete Morrison looked up from the documents. This says you stole my brother's land. Forged his signature. After he died, Moses confirmed. Claimed he owed money he never borrowed. More voices now. Angry, but not at Moses. At the men who'd manipulated them. Used their prejudice to hide their crimes. Sheriff Coleman drew his gun. Enough. The crowd stepped back, horses dancing nervously. The morning air thick with tension. You think I'll let some educated boy destroy my family? Samuel moved, stepped between the gun and Moses, shield of flesh and bone. Tom, we've known each other 30 years. Don't do this. 30 years of you thinking you're better than the rest of us. Coleman's voice shook with rage. You and your high-minded principles. The gun wavered, pointed at Samuel's chest. Step aside. Samuel didn't move, couldn't move. This was the choice he'd made 12 years ago, standing between a child and the world that wanted to destroy him. No. The shot cracked like thunder. Samuel stumbled backward, red spreading across his shirt. Moses caught him as he fell. The crowd exploded, men shouting, horses rearing. Morrison tackled Coleman, wrestled the gun away. Samuel lay in Moses's arms, blood warm against the cold ground, his breathing shallow, labored. The ranch, he whispered. The papers. It's all yours now, son. Moses held him as the light faded from his eyes, felt the weight of a father's love settling on his shoulders like a mantle. The trial lasted 3 days. Evidence presented, witnesses called, the truth laid bare in open court. Sheriff Coleman convicted of murder, Harrison Coleman sentenced to 20 years for fraud. Their empire crumbling like a house built on sand. Moses inherited everything, land, cattle, the respect of men who'd once wanted him dead. They called him Mr. Mackenzie now, tipped their hats when he passed. 6 months later, he stood in the same spot where Samuel had died, where blood had watered the earth and something new had grown from it. A family approached. Father, mother, 3 children. Clothes worn thin, eyes hollow with desperation. the father's skin dark as Moses' own. "Mr. Mackenzie, we heard you might have work." Moses studied them, saw himself 12 years ago, scared, hopeful, needing someone to believe in their humanity. "Can you read, sir?" The man shook his head, shame coloring his features. Moses handed him Samuel's worn Bible, the same one that had taught him letters, words, the power of knowledge. Every child deserves a chance at life. He looked at the children, young, bright, hungry for opportunity. School starts Monday. The cycle begins again. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.